Now, when it comes to writing poems, I suggest that one way to think of this is to ask, how can we create a time in which the children can gather some thoughts and ideas that we can use to make poems? One way is to think that the resources we have at hand are the things we say, or that other people say to us, the things we can see going on, the things we hear, the things we think, the things we feel, the things that we're doing ourselves if we're in the scene in question. Now, there are many routes to tap into this, using photos, paintings, other poems, a title, a situation, a feeling, a memory, a story that I've been told, a moment or scene from real life, a moment or a scene in a play or a novel, a piece of music. If we ask a question for each of these resources, as I've called them, then we can pool the answers. So let's say we started from a situation like breakfast time at home, and we ask, what can you see going on? You can pull the answers on a big piece of paper and pin that up. Same again for each of the others. Saying, that's you and others. Thinking, hearing, feeling, seeing going on, doing. So you end up with a series of big posters of all the things that people have come up with. This is a resource you can use to make poems. That's either class poems or individual ones, because what you can do is choose lines from each of these big sheets of paper and put them together. So you have a saying, thinking, feeling, seeing, doing poem. You can show, that's either by doing it yourself or by comparing what you're doing with poems that have already been written and published, that you can make poems out of just one or two of these different resources. So you could write a seeing poem about breakfast, or a saying poem about breakfast, or you could write a thinking and feeling poem interrupted by hearing, and so on. There are also ways in which you can introduce patterns to what you're writing through rhythm, repetition, and chorus. If you've got a poetry-friendly classroom going, then these are the secret strings I've talked about that you've probably started to notice. Using this range of words to describe writing, saying, seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, and impossible writing, I'm going to come to that in a minute, actually gives you a range of very accessible ways of talking about poems that you read. You can spot how poets switch between these different senses. You can also talk about what I've called impossible writing. Here it is. You can show that you can write things that don't make sense, and yet, in a funny way, they do. Take Hey Diddle Diddle. A cow jumps over a moon, and a dish runs away with a spoon. Well, that's quite odd and is meant to be a bit funny, perhaps. But you can also do impossible writing about sad, scary, or mysterious things like the bed started to eat me, the sky bent down, the lemon drove off. This gives us another resource, another way of thinking that we can introduce into real situations, like breakfast, or as a way of writing in itself, say about autumn, or the market, or whatever. In one workshop I did where we were looking at a sad scene in a photo, a child wrote, "And the leaves called out my name." Don't forget, you can always write poems for your class, or about your class, and with your class. Don't forget, there are fantastic resources to help you with poetry. You can invite a poet to come to your school. There's bound to be poetry readings at a local book festival. There are poetry CDs, videos, and websites like the Poetry Archive.